do all the problems that we didn't get to, so hopefully I can squash this into one video so it won't last forever. We skipped this one. So we had 16x squared equals 19, and it says use the square root property. You always want to divide anything out first. The last thing you want to do is address the power. So we need to come in here and divide through by 16, and that gives us x squared equals 19 over 16. Then we're going to come in and do the square root of both sides. Well, the left comes out well. That's just x. Remember, you got to put plus minus. And this is the same thing as doing the square root at the top over the square root at the bottom, which is going to work in our favor because 19 is stuck, and 16 we can do and we get a 4. And that's okay because the square root's in the top. We don't have to rationalize because there's no square roots in the bottom. So that's our two answers right there. Okay, then again it says use the square root property. So I've got y plus 2 quantity squared plus 120 equals 0. Well, to do the square root property, you have to get the squared part alone. So I'm going to keep that on the left, and I'm going to move the 120 to the other side. So it will become negative 120. So there's nothing to divide. I've got just this group that is squared. So the first thing I got to do is address the square. So square root this side, square root this side. Well, these two counteract each other, inverses, and I just get y plus 2. All right, when I move to the other side, I've got to remember my plus minus. I know I'm going to get an I because there's a negative, and now I have to break down 120. So I've got to figure out what is the biggest perfect square that goes into 120. Well, I know 4 does, but I doubt seriously that's the largest one. Well, 4 times 30, and there's nothing hiding in 30, so I guess that is it. It is 4. So let's see here. We're going to do square root of 4 gives me a 2. Sandwich that I in between. And I've got one last thing, because you don't want to leave it y plus 2. You want to tell me what y is equal to. So this 2 needs to come over. And it'll be a negative 2 plus minus 2i square root of 30. So that's the way your answers need to appear. Okay, and I think we're going to get really close to... Okay, this is where we made it to in class. All it was wanting you to do was complete the square. You know, what was the ending part. So don't overthink this problem. It's not wanting you to solve anything. It just wants you to take that in half and square it. Hold up just a second. Okay, here we go. We did the completing the square. We did the quadratic formula. And then we did a couple of the word problems. We did not get to this far. So I wanted to finish these up. It says use factoring. Always look for something common first. So think GCF, okay? Looks like everybody has an x. So we can take an x out. That leaves x squared plus 7x minus 18 equals 0. Okay, so continue to factor. You cross your fingers and hope real hard. Let's see here. Are there two numbers that multiply to 18, yet subtract to give you 7? And I do believe that we have that in 9 and 2. Signs are different. The biggest one is plus. So the 9 gets the plus and the 2 gets the minus. So each one gets set equal to 0. So that's just going to change signs. And this one will also change signs. But don't forget your 0. So when you type it in, you've got to have all 3 of them. Now, it doesn't matter what order, but you do have to have 3. The biggest power tells you how many answers you're going to have. Okay, so like when I look at this one, I see y to the 4th. I know I'm going to have to type 4 answers. So just so you know. Okay, now it does say factor this, and it will factor as long as this one right here is half of that. So 2 is half of 4, so we're good. We're good. So so you're like, okay, what times itself gives you y to the 4th? Well, that's just y to the 2nd. So when this is half, it's always just this one goes right here. Okay. Now ask yourself, same type factoring as you always do, since there's a 1 here. It's the easy kind. What two numbers multiply to 36 and add to give you 13? Well, that'd be 9 and that'd be 4. Signs are the same, both of them negative. Now, you have an option here. You can stop and set them both equal and solve, or you can continue to factor. So I'm going to do it both ways. So here's method 1. So this would be stop and solve. Okay? Method 2, continue factoring. Now, but you do not have to do it both ways on the test. I'm just trying to give you options, so please, I'm really not trying to confuse anyone. If I just stop right here and I solve, I've got to set both of these equal to 0. So that's y squared minus 9 equals 0, and y squared minus 4 equals 0. Okay, when you move them both over, they become positive. Then you've got to come in and do square root of both sides. So I'm going to do the square root of both of these. And here's where people screw up because they forget to do the plus minus. And that is the most common boo-boo on these problems when it comes to test time. So I should have 4 answers. Remember, you've got to have 4. So I've got 1, 2. So you've got 3, you've got negative 3, and you've got 2, and you've got negative 2. So I should have all 4 of these answers in my solution set. If you continue to factor, that's normally not a problem. So if you take this one and factor it, that's the difference of 2 squares. So square root, that'd be 3, 3, opposite signs. Well, we're going to take this one, and we're going to do square root, and that would be a 2, and we're going to have a minus and a plus. Now you're just going to change the signs of everybody. So there's your negative 3, there's your positive 3, and there's your negative 2, and there's your positive 2. And so your 4 answers kind of fall in your lap. It just, you got to pick which method works best for your brain. So different strokes for different folks. Okay, it's the same idea here. If you'll notice, this power right here is 1/5. Well, this power is 2/5. So as long as 1/5 is half of 2/5, which it is, we're good to go. So there's nothing common that we can pull out. Everybody didn't have a t, and 19's prime. So since there's a 12 here in front, we've got the hard kind of factoring. Now I'm just going to rewrite it so I can see a little bit better. I'm not too thrilled about this t. Sorry, my t's are pretty hurt. Y'all should know that by now. Okay, so I need 2 numbers that multiply to 12. So I'm going to start with 3 and 4 because I don't know anything different. So let's just do 3 and 4. So, but keep in mind, I'm going to use this power. Okay, so I'm going to put 4 here, and I'm going to do t to the 1/5. Now, I got to come up with 2 numbers that multiply to 2. Oh, excuse me, 4. Pardon. My middle terms, this and this, need to add to 19. Okay, if I'm going to add to 19, I need an odd number. So let's say I do 4 and 1. That gives me 16. That gives me 3. So that works. 16 and 3 works. So signs are the same, both plus. So I'm going to put plus sign here, plus sign there. Now the only option I have is to set them both equal to 0, solve them out. And then I'm going to have 4t to the 1/5 plus 1 equals 0. All right? Start solving. 3t to the 1/5, and that's going to be a negative 4. Well, same thing that we did earlier when we were dealing with the square root property. Anytime you do anything with a power, you got to get it down to just that part. You got to isolate the exponent. That's what I'm getting at. So do your division first. Now that's t to the 1/5 equals negative 4/3. Now to counteract this 1/5, the inverse of that is do the reciprocal power, 5 over 1. So you're going to raise it to the 5th. Okay, this is fixing to blow up now. If I take a negative and I raise it to an odd power, so that means there's 5 negatives, so it's going to be negative. Now I need to know what is 4 to the 5th. 4 rooftop 5 is 1024. And 3 to the 5th is 243. And that's a 2. It's a little hard to tell, but that's a 2. Okay. Over here, same idea. 4t to the 1/5 equals negative 1. Divide through by 4. Okay, so I got t to the 1/5 equals negative 1/4. All right, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to raise everybody to the 5th power because these counteract each other and I just get t. Well, 5 negatives makes a negative. 1 to the 5th is just 1. 4 to the 5th is, okay, now we learned a while ago that was 1024. Now here's the bad thing. We got to check these. You have to check them every time you raise it to a power. You don't have to check when you do roots, but when you raise it to a power, you got to check. Now, so I'm going to write down my problem so I can scroll down. Okay, so this is going to be 2 to the 5th, excuse me, 2 fifths, and that's 19t to the 1/5 plus 4 equals 0. Okay, so now I can scroll down. Well, if it'll move, maybe. There we go. We're going slow. Okay, so yeesh. To type this in, and I'll be honest with you, it'd be better if you didn't worry about the typing part, because your calculator is probably going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. I don't mean to spook you, but that's just going to be the case. Like, you can have all this to the 2 fifths plus 19, all this to the 1/5 plus 4 equals 0. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is put in this negative 1024 over 243. Now, you got to be a little slick about this, okay? The way we went from 4/3 to this awful fraction is we raised everything to the 5th. We're just going to go backwards because these things that have 5s in the bottom, remember that's the 5th root, so we are going backwards here, okay? So what this means is I can take off the 5 part, take the 5th root, and I end up with negative 4/3, and I'm going to keep the square. So I still need to square that. So on this one, I need to do the 5th root, so go backwards, negative 4/3, and so I've got the 1, but anything to the 1 power is just itself. So the only thing I really need to do is take this thing and square it. So if I square that, negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. 3 times 3 is 9. If you can do that part, it'll help so much. Now, because your calculator has limitations with these fractional exponents. Here, I would do 19, remember that's on the top, 19 times 4. 19 times 4 is 76. Well, it's going to be negative. So negative 76 over 3 plus 4. All right, on this one, okay, 12 over 1, so 12 times 16 is 192 over 9 minus 76 over 3 plus 4 equals 0. Okay, that looks just horrible. I tried to do terrible and horrible at the same time, and it came out bad. Okay, so let's see here. 192 divided by 9, and remember, hit your second and your PRV button, enter, and then do second ABC and enter, and that will reduce your fraction for you. So I got 64 over 3 minus 76 over 3 plus, okay, now I want to change 4 to something over 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, so 64 and 12 are both the positive versions. So if I add them up, I do get 76. That thing actually works. So even though it was like crazy, that's a legitimate answer. All right, now I got to check the other one. I know, it's terrible. Okay, so this is 2 fifths plus 19, and this is to the 1/5 plus 4 equals 0. Okay, now what was the second answer? It was, what was it? Negative 1 over. So negative 1 over 1024. So negative 1 over 1024. I forgot the 10 part. Okay, remember we're going to do the exact same thing. To do 5th root, we're going to think sneaky, and we're going to go backwards. So when we're taking care of this part, all we're doing is we're going back to where we got it. So we're going to replace it with a negative 1/4. Keep your square. So I'm going to have negative 1/4. Keep my square. Okay, that's just letting me know I'm running out of time. Okay, so here I'm going to do my negative 1/4. Now I'm keeping the first power, but remember that everything's good. I'm just going to try to finish within a minute. Okay, square the top is 1, square the bottom is 16. Okay, that's going to end up being negative 19 over 4. Okay, I didn't close my parentheses. There we go. That is 12 over 16. I think I can reduce that. 4 goes into this 3 times, 4 goes into this 4 times. So I have 3/4 minus 19/4 plus 4 times 4 is 16 over 4. Now look, if you don't like my fractions, type it in there and go with it. But 3/4 and 16/4 is 19/4. So they both actually work. So both of them are legit. So I'll stop here and pick it up in the next one.